Despite being the richest club in the world, Newcastle has not been behaving like one. The Saudi takeover was supposed to set them up for success. Big money signings, new facilities, and a generational manager. Manchester City and Chelsea had all broken into successful eras after huge financial takeovers. But for Newcastle, none of that has really happened. Why is that? Well, contrary to popular belief, money doesn't guarantee instant success, at least not in the current era. The Saudi billions cannot be directly invested into the club due to squad cost rules and the Premier League's PSR regulations. In the 2000s, Roman Abramovich ran wild, at one point spending 100 million in just one window. He set out to build a squad of ready-made winners by poaching other big clubs. His notable signing was Claude Makelele from Real Madrid. Similarly, Sheikh Mansour at City spent aggressively to attract the best talents. The signings of Robinho, Aguero, Company, David Silva all signaled intent. Back then, clubs could outspend rivals. In fact, Chelsea and City cannibalized Arsenal to form part of their early successes. The Premier League has changed, and ironically, Newcastle has had to sell their prospects just to stay within the financial obligation. But PSR guidelines and FFP don't excuse Newcastle's poor recruitment and squad building. Looking back to City and Chelsea, the owners went out for clear winners, established players who had an immediate and lasting impact at their clubs. Newcastle had begun recruitment well, signing the likes of Kieran Trippier, Bruno Guimaraes, Alexander Isak, and Sandro Tonali. But the overhaul stalled, and the once promising players have plateaued. The initial core that Howie inherited is largely intact. In fact, it has only gone to lost big names. The issue with recruitment has been exacerbated in the recent windows, with key targets snubbing the club for rivals. Benjamin Sesko opted for Man United. Joao Pedro signed for Chelsea. And when they had tried to replace Isak with Ekitike, they only saw both of them leave to join Liverpool. And all that is despite Newcastle offering record fees and wages. So why exactly are players snubbing Newcastle? Analysts point out to the location, with bigger cities, Manchester and London, offering a whole lot more than Newcastle in terms of lifestyle, travel, and amenities such as schools and shopping malls. These cities enhance the branding of the footballer. Others point to the history gap. Despite being big in England, Newcastle isn't particularly a favorite for foreign players. No one really grew up wanting to play for Newcastle. In this aspect, the Big Six will always have that prestigious pull over Newcastle. But the more nuanced answer is that Newcastle doesn't have a proof of concept yet. Chelsea had spending power and the young Mourinho to lure players. City had the investments in the academy and Pep Guardiola to spearhead the project. What exactly does Newcastle have to convince incoming players? The project is still in its early phases, with no consistent success. The top players are growing increasingly impatient, and it has only gotten worse after the controversial departure of Alexander Isak. For Newcastle to really hit the heights they set out to, tough questions have to be asked, particularly to manager Eddie Howe. City and Chelsea had a clear style of play to be implemented right from the first team down to the academy, has indeed elevated Newcastle with Champions League football and their recent Carabao Cup win. But has he hit his tactical ceiling? Has used the same core of players since his early days? There's been development stagnation across the squad. For Newcastle's takeover by the Saudi to pay off in footballing success, Newcastle should look to the steps that allowed City and Chelsea to grow. Newcastle should appoint a competent sporting director. City's success is largely owed to Jiki Bigiristan, their sporting director from Barca. Bigiristan applied Barca's style of play in City right from the first team down to the academies through appointing Guardiola. Newcastle lost Dan Ashworth, who had been in charge of the early and most significant signings. Newcastle's owners should also massively invest in the academy. Both Chelsea and City have come to produce some of their best talents through the academies. City invested into their Etihad campus, and Chelsea's Cobham is famous as a talent factory. Instead of over-relying on big and costly signings, academies offer a bit of security and have become even more important in the age of financial fair play. The sale of an academy player counts as pure profit for the club. Newcastle in recent times has been forced to sell their most promising prospects just to comply with financial regulation. While the Saudi-backed Newcastle project has not failed yet, fans of the club should not expect any instant success